A harsh, unrelenting sun bore down on the jungle-like world of Lycara Prime. In the year 2379 CE, humans had only recently begun to probe the secrets of this frontier planet's ecosystem. Lycara's dense canopy of violet-hued trees stretched as far as the eye could see, broken only by jagged rock formations that erupted from the jungle floor like the vertebrae of some ancient, fossilized beast. Dr. Serena Valdez stood at the edge of the drop zone, her boots sinking slightly into the rich, dark soil. Her eyes, hazel with flecks of amber, narrowed as she surveyed the tree line. At 38, she was considered one of the Terran Science Consortium's premier xenobiologists. Though years of bureaucratic politics had left a slight edge of cynicism to her otherwise methodical approach. A compressed holofeed flickered to life above her wrist gauntlet, displaying only floating data readouts representing the Terran Science Consortium brass. Their faceless presence somehow made their orders seem even more coldly calculated. "Categorize or die, Dr. Valdez," came the disembodied voice through the feed. "The survival of our colony expansion depends on your success. We need DNA samples of this world's deadliest predator before we can proceed with the orbital survey." Serena's lips pressed into a thin line. "And if the deadliest predator happens to be as lethal as your previous reports suggest?" There was a pause. "Then you'll need to be faster than the last 5. The feed cut out abruptly, leaving Serena alone with the ambient sounds of the alien jungle. Somewhere in the distance, a high-pitched screech echoed through the trees, followed by a sudden, telling silence. "Moderately challenging," she murmured to herself. "Just like last Tuesday." She methodically inspected her field pod, a compact shelter that would serve as her base of operations. Her scanning gauntlets, state-of-the-art xenobiological analysis tools, hummed softly as they calibrated to Lycara's unique atmospheric conditions. The adaptive biorifle slung across her back was a last resort, but one she had trained extensively with nonetheless. Her scanner pulsed, flagging dozens of lethal flora and fauna within a 50-meter radius, all marked in red. Taking a deep breath of filtered air, Serena stepped beyond the perimeter of the drop zone. The mission clock had begun. The jungle of Lycara Prime seemed to close in around her with each step she took. Broad leaves dripping with viscous, amber fluid created a canopy overhead that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. Her scanner beeped continuously, identifying potential threats. A patch of flowers whose pollen carried neurotoxins, vines that would snap shut if brushed against, fungi that released hallucinogenic spores when disturbed. 30 minutes into her trek, Serena's scanner registered something new, a massive, erratic biosignature that sent the readings off scale. She froze, crouching behind a moss-covered boulder. Whatever the scanner had detected was large, very large. The vines nearby snapped shut as she passed, their barbed edges missing her by inches. Toxic pollen pulsed in the air, a glittering cloud that her mask filtered out. Each step required careful consideration, a game of lethal hopscotch through Lycara's natural defenses. Then the ground gave way beneath her. Serena fell, a startled cry escaping her lips as she tumbled into a pitfall, camouflaged by carnivorous foliage. She managed to grab onto a root, arresting her descent just before she would have plunged onto a bed of spike-like thorns below. Breathing heavily, she pulled herself up and back onto solid ground. That was when she saw it, or rather, sensed it. A shift in the air, a deliberate stillness that felt distinctly predatory. Triggering her heat visor, Serena scanned the canopy. There, moving with surprising grace for its size, was a multi-limbed silhouette. The jungle seemed to part before it, as if even the lethal flora knew better than to impede its passage. The leaves rustled above her. From the underbrush, 4 dagger-shaped claws erupted inches from her face, gleaming in the filtered sunlight. Her scanner flashed urgently. Alert! Species X-17, size 4M or shoulder, priority lethal. In that frozen moment, Serena understood the true nature of her mission. This wasn't just about collecting data. This was about survival against one of the most formidable predators she had ever encountered. Her heart hammered in her chest, the pulse of it loud in her ears. Time seemed to stretch as she faced an impossible choice: flee and lose the data she was sent to collect, or stay and risk losing her life. If I flee, I lose my data, she thought, her mind racing. If I stand, I lose my life. But the TSC expects results. The predator's claws retracted slightly, as if it was studying her. Serena made her choice. She ran. The jungle floor blurred beneath Serena's boots as she sprinted through the underbrush, narrowly avoiding snapping jaw plants that lunged for her ankles. Her breathing came in controlled gasps, the product of years of field training in hostile environments. Behind her, she could hear the methodical pursuit of the apex predator, its movements deliberate and unhurried. It wasn't rushing because it didn't need to. On Lycara Prime, it was the ultimate hunter. Serena squeezed between two rotund, killer spore toads that erupted in toxic froth as she passed, creating a momentary barrier between her and her pursuer. Her scanner isolated a massive gate pattern above her. The predator was using the treetops to maintain visual contact while avoiding the spore cloud. Intelligent, Serena muttered, accelerating toward a rocky outcrop that promised some degree of cover. It's not just hunting by instinct. She stumbled slightly, her foot catching on a hidden root, but recovered quickly enough to avoid falling. In that brief moment of imbalance, she caught a clearer glimpse of her pursuer through a gap in the canopy. The creature the scanner had labeled as the Carmine Colossus moved with fluid grace, its hide a mottled pattern of deep reds and midnight blacks that seemed to absorb the dappled jungle light. 6 eyes, arranged in 3 distinct pairs, glinted with bioluminescent pulses as they tracked her movement. There was an undeniable intelligence in those eyes. This was no mindless beast. It knew she was there, and it was choosing to pursue. Her comlink crackled to life, cutting through the sounds of the jungle. Dr. Valdez, the voice belonged to Lieutenant Rio Tao, her monitoring contact on the TSC starbase orbiting Lycara Prime. Your vital signs are spiking, and we're getting erratic movement patterns. What's your status? Serena ducked behind a fallen log, pressing her back against the rotting wood as she caught her breath. I've made contact with X-17, she whispered, keeping her voice low. It's pursuing me through Sector 5 of the drop zone. Predator is far too large according to our scans, Rio replied, alarm evident in his voice. We'll send a drone to scare it off, please. Doctor, return to base. There's an emergency extraction beacon 2 kilometers northeast of your position. Serena's gaze flicked to her scanner, which showed the predator circling her position, seemingly content to maintain distance for now. There was something calculated about its behavior, as if it was evaluating her, rather than simply hunting. Negative, she replied, surprising herself with her decision. I need a sample. That's what I was sent here for. Serena. Rio rarely used her first name unless the situation was dire. This isn't worth your life. The data can wait. But Serena had already made up her mind. Against Rio's direct orders. She readied her handheld molecular sampler, a device designed to collect and analyze DNA fragments from even the most minute sources. If she could just get close enough to gather a sample from the predator's shed skin cells, saliva, or other biological material, she might accomplish her mission without direct confrontation. Just one sample, she muttered, activating the device. Just one. The algorithm's off by 2%, but it should be enough for preliminary analysis. She edged out from behind the log, scanning the nearby foliage where the predator had recently passed. There, on a spray of microscopic spores clinging to a leaf, She detected traces of cellular material consistent with what would be the apex predator's DNA. The sampler whirred softly as it collected the material. Come on," Serena urged under her breath. A shadow fell across her, blotting out the filtered sunlight. In a single, fluid bound, the carmine colossus pounced from a ledge above. Serena rolled aside, gritting her teeth as she narrowly avoided being crushed beneath the creature's massive form. But she wasn't quick enough to avoid a grazing hit from one of its claws, which sliced through the outer layer of her protective suit and drew blood from her left leg. The pain was sharp, but manageable. What mattered was that in the creature's leap, a piece of claw-shedding tissue had dislodged and fallen directly into the path of her sampler. The device beeped triumphantly, confirming successful collection. But her scanner flashed a warning. "Damage imminent!" running on a surge of adrenaline. Serena tapped a sequence on her wrist gauntlet, transmitting the partial DNA sample back to the starbase. At least the mission wouldn't be a complete failure if she didn't make it back. "Sample transmitted," she gasped into her comm. "Partial sequence, but it should be enough for preliminary analysis." Then, she collapsed behind a moss-coated boulder, pressing a hand to her wounded leg. The blood was flowing steadily, but not dangerously so. She administered a quick spray of biofoam to seal the wound temporarily. The thunderous footsteps of the predator approached her hiding spot, each impact sending vibrations through the ground. Serena held her breath, knowing she had nowhere left to run. The carmine colossus was mere meters away, its breathing audible now, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to resonate through her very bones. At the last possible moment, when discovery seemed inevitable, something unexpected happened. Two smaller silhouettes descended from the trees above, landing between Serena and the adult predator. They were juvenile versions of the colossus, perhaps 2 meters tall at the shoulder compared to the adult's 4. They screeched in high-pitched tones, their 6 eyes glowing with the same bioluminescence as the adult's. The adult halted, growling in a low rumble that Serena felt more than heard. The juveniles didn't retreat. Instead, they circled the adult, chittering in what seemed almost like communication. Serena's heart hammered as she watched the interaction. Had the juveniles somehow defended her? Or had they simply redirected the hunt? Either way, it bought her precious seconds to assess her situation. What happened next defied her expectations completely. The adult lunged briefly at the juveniles, not to attack, but to admonish them, snapping its jaws in what appeared to be a display of authority. The juveniles backed up slightly, but remained between the adult and Serena's position. "Intelligence," Serena whispered, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her fear for a moment. "Not just instinct. They're communicating." Her comm crackled again. "Dr. Valdez," Rio's voice was urgent. "The drone shows multiple X-17 signatures converging on your position. Get out now. We'll send extraction shuttles to the emergency beacon." Serena was torn. Everything in her training told her to retreat, to prioritize her own survival. But what she was witnessing, this unexpected familial bond in the Predator clan, was unprecedented. It could rewrite xenobiological textbooks. "I have to know if they're social," she replied softly, her scientific curiosity reasserting itself despite the danger. The adult predator shifted position, seeming to notice for the first time that it had sustained a minor wound, not from Serena, but from what appeared to be a trap triggered during the chase. It limped slightly, favoring one of its limbs. The juveniles chittered in response, moving closer to the adult in what almost looked like concern. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the predator family retreated. The adult, wounded but still formidable, guided the juveniles away through a narrow crevice in the rock formation nearby. Serena, exhausted and still bleeding despite the biofoam, watched them go. She noticed that the adult had used a specific path, one that seemed to avoid the most dangerous of the jungle's flora. It knew the terrain. It was protecting its young. She contemplated following, hoping to observe the predators in their den. The scientific value would be immeasurable. But her injured leg and the fading light forced her to confront reality. She needed to make a choice. Rest until morning, or risk exposure to even more lethal dangers in pursuit of knowledge. As the light dimmed and Lycara Prime's nocturnal predators began to stir, Serena made her decision. Morning broke over Lycara Prime, casting long, violet shadows through the jungle canopy. Serena had spent an uncomfortable night in a makeshift shelter, treating her leg wound and contemplating the remarkable behavior she'd witnessed from the apex predator clan. Her scientific training told her to report back to the TSC with the sample she'd already collected. Mission technically accomplished. But her instincts as a xenobiologist pushed her toward a far riskier path. She flagged her current location on her scanner, leaving a digital breadcrumb for the TSC to follow if she didn't return. Then, supplies replenished and leg bandaged, she set out to follow the predator pack's trail toward the hidden canyon they had disappeared into the previous evening. The path was difficult to discern at first, but Serena's trained eye picked out subtle signs: disturbed foliage, distinctive claw marks on tree trunks, and most tellingly, the absence of certain lethal flora that seemed to have been deliberately cleared away. It was as if the predators maintained safe corridors through the jungle, another sign of intelligence far beyond what the TSC had anticipated. As the sun climbed higher, the jungle gradually gave way to a rocky ravine. Bioluminescent flora clung to the stone walls, pulsing with gentle light, even in daylight. Serena's scanner labeled the location the Crimson Gorge, a reference to the reddish hue of the stone and perhaps the coloration of its apex inhabitants. She moved cautiously, every sense alert for danger. The air here was different, richer in oxygen but laced with unfamiliar compounds. Her mask filtered out. The gorge twisted and narrowed, eventually opening into a broader canyon with multiple cave openings dotting its walls. And there, visible in the largest of these openings, was what Serena had hoped to find: the den of the Carmine Colossus. Keeping to the shadows, Serena activated her visor's magnification. The cave interior bristled with giant nests, made of what appeared to be bone shards and woven vines. Juvenile predators, she counted at least 5, curled up in these nests, occasionally rising to consume what looked like sacks of live grubs brought by the adults. But what truly captured her attention were the piles of unusual artifacts arranged near the cave entrance. Shredded pieces of what appeared to be old survey drones, organized in neat stacks. Some of the juvenile predators seemed to be manipulating these pieces, arranging them in patterns that suggested either tool use or some form of ritual behavior. "Incredible," Serena breathed, her scanner quietly recording everything she observed. This wasn't just a predator species. This was a society with structure, with family units, possibly even with rudimentary culture. Her scanner beeped a warning: increased carbon dioxide levels, potential toxic gases in the cave system. Meanwhile, her leg wound had begun seeping again, the biofoam degrading faster than expected in Lycara's atmosphere. Serena faced an internal struggle that had nothing to do with the predators. "If I stay, I may die from exposure or infection," she thought. "If I leave, I lose proof of sentience." The scientific discovery here could redefine humanity's approach to alien life forms. It could rewrite xenobiology textbooks, but at what personal cost? While she deliberated, fate made the decision for her. A shadow fell across the entrance to her hiding spot. Serena froze, her breath catching in her throat. The wounded mother predator, the adult colossus from the previous day, had returned alone to the nest. Their eyes met across the gorge, Serena's wide with apprehension. The predator's 6 orbs, glowing with what might have been recognition. Time seemed to stretch between them, a moment of mutual assessment. Serena made a decision that defied every TSC protocol. She slowly removed her helmet, exposing her face to Lycara's atmosphere. She lowered her weapon, placing it deliberately on the ground. Then, with movements so gradual they were barely perceptible, she held out a bandage from her medical kit. "I'm not here to hurt you," she murmured, knowing the predator couldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone and body language might convey her intent. I saw your babies." The mother predator tilted her massive head, the bioluminescence in her eyes shifting in pattern. She moved forward, not with the predatory stance of a hunter, but with the cautious approach of an intelligent being encountering something unfamiliar. When they were less than 3 meters apart, the predator did something extraordinary. She extended one smaller appendage, a limb Serena hadn't noticed before, tucked close to the body, and gently brushed Serena's prosthetic arm. The touch was so light, it barely registered, but its significance was enormous. It was an act reminiscent of a human mother touching a child's cheek, curious, careful, almost tender. Serena's scanner, still active at her belt, registered a wave of compounds in the predator's biochemistry that were analogous to human endorphins. Was this empathy? Taking another calculated risk, Serena gestured to the wound on the predator's flank, the injury she had noticed the day before. She held up her field kit, mime-acting the process of cleaning and treating a wound. The predator watched, 6 eyes unblinking, then slowly shifted position to expose the injured area more fully. With trembling hands, Serena approached. The entire den seemed to hold its breath, juvenile predators watching from the cave entrance, the mother standing unnaturally still. One wrong move could trigger defensive aggression that would end Serena's life in seconds. She began to disinfect the wound, applying a gentle antibiotic gel that her scanner suggested would be compatible with the predator's biology. The creature flinched once but didn't retreat. Instead, she closed her eyes, all 6 of them, in what appeared to be an astonishing display of trust. In that moment, Serena realized she was no longer there as a conqueror or even as a scientist. She was there as a potential ally to a species that, until yesterday, had been classified only as a lethal threat. As she finished applying a biogel to seal the wound, the predator made a low, rumbling sound deep in her throat. Then, to Serena's amazement, she gently nudged one of the juveniles toward her. The smaller predator approached cautiously, then nuzzled at Serena's boot with a curiosity that seemed almost childlike. Serena's translator, calibrated to analyze unknown vocalizations, struggled to interpret the adult's rumbling purr, but it rendered an approximate meaning: appreciation. The sound paralleled the contented warmth of a child safe near its mother. Her comm unit crackled suddenly, breaking the moment. "Dr. Valdez!" Lieutenant Rio's voice was sharp with concern. "We've been tracking your signal. What in heaven's name are you doing in that gorge? Our scans show multiple X-17 signatures all around you." Serena backed away slightly from the predator family, but maintained visual contact as she responded. "Rio, listen to me. I've made contact with the apex species. They're not just predators. They're sentient. I've observed tool use, social structure, even empathetic behavior. We can't just kill them for data." There was a long pause before Rio replied, his voice tight. "You're not authorized to make contact. Doctor, the TSC protocol is clear. Categorize, sample, and evacuate. Get out now." "But I've found something incredible here," Serena insisted. "Something that changes everything we thought we knew about Lycara Prime. The consortium has already dispatched lethal detachment drones to your location," Rio said, an edge of desperation in his voice. "They're operating on the original mission parameters. I can't override them. Please, Serena, for your own safety, get out of there." The implications hit Serena like a physical blow. The TSC had sent drones programmed to eliminate the apex predator, to kill this intelligent creature and her family just to obtain comprehensive biological samples. She looked at the predator mother, who had gathered her juveniles closer, sensing the change in Serena's demeanor. The trust that had begun to build between them was fragile, new, but it was real. In that moment, Serena made the most significant decision of her career, perhaps of her life. She would stand between the TSC and this newfound sentient species. She would protect the discovery that could reshape humanity's understanding of alien intelligence. As the distant whine of approaching drones echoed through the gorge, Serena stepped toward the cave entrance, raising her arms in a gesture that she hoped would translate across species. "I will defend you." The predator mother stirred behind her, a low rumble escalating to a roar that reverberated through the stone walls of the canyon. Serena didn't look back. Her focus was on the approaching threat, on the choice she had made to defy her own kind to protect another. A TSC gunship hovered above the gorge, its engines stirring the jungle canopy at the rim of the canyon. With mechanical precision, it lowered a drone into the space between the ship and the cave entrance. The drone was a sleek, deadly apparatus designed for one purpose: to incapacitate, or if necessary, eliminate targets classified as extreme threats. Serena positioned herself directly in the drone's path, her arms spread wide. "Stop!" she shouted, knowing the drone's audio receptors would pick up her voice. "They're sentient. This is a first contact situation, not an extermination mission." The drone hovered, its targeting lasers pinging back and forth between Serena's body and the predator family behind her. Its programming conflicted: protect human life, but complete the assigned termination of X-17 specimens. Behind her, Serena could hear the predator mother's breathing, heavy, anxious, but controlled. The juveniles had retreated deeper into the cave, but the mother remained, a hulking presence at Serena's back. "Dr. Valdez, stand aside," came a mechanical voice from the drone. "TSC Protocol 537B authorizes use of force against non-compliant personnel in high-risk scenarios." "I refuse," Serena replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I am invoking Scientific Ethics Override Clause 12. These creatures show clear signs of sentience and social structure. They require diplomatic approach, not extermination." The drone paused, its systems processing this unexpected resistance. In that moment of hesitation, Serena did something that defied both training and instinct. She extended her bandaged hand backward, toward the predator's muzzle. It was the ultimate test. If the predator chose to attack her now, with her back turned and her attention divided, it would confirm the TSC's classification of the species as nothing more than lethal wildlife. If it recognized her gesture for what it was, an offering of trust, it might just save both their lives. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The predator roared in protective fury, its 6 eyes blazing with bioluminescent intensity. The drone's targeting systems locked on, preparing to fire. And then something extraordinary happened. Instead of attacking Serena, the predator turned away from the drone. It let out a low, harmonic growl that reverberated through the gorge like a lullaby. Then, with deliberate movements that spoke of both intelligence and intention, it carefully wrapped its massive form around its young, creating a protective coil in the shadows of the cave. But it didn't retreat completely. Instead, it positioned itself so that Serena stood between it and the drone. It had effectively chosen to protect Serena the way it would protect its own cubs, using its body to shield her from potential harm, while simultaneously signaling to the drone that this human was not a threat. The drone's AI struggled to process this behavior. Its sensors detected the predator's calming pulses, subsonic vibrations that registered as non-aggressive, even as its targeting systems remained locked on Serena. The contradiction in data caused a processing loop that the drone couldn't resolve. After several tense moments, The drone's targeting lasers powered down. Anomalous behavior detected, it reported flatly. Reassessing threat level. Withdrawing for protocol clarification. The drone ascended back toward the gunship, leaving Serena and the Predator family in an unexpected moment of reprieve. Within the gorge, a profound silence fell. Serena turned slowly to face the Predator, tears of relief and wonder tracking down her cheeks. The massive creature regarded her with all 6 eyes, its posture relaxed but alert, its juveniles peering curiously from the safety of its embrace. In that moment, standing between worlds, Serena understood that she had witnessed something unprecedented in xenobiology. An apex predator, choosing empathy over aggression, protection over predation. It was a revelation that would change everything, if she could convince the TSC to see what she saw. Above in orbit, the TSC command center erupted in chaos. Lieutenant Rio's monitoring station displayed multiple conflicting data streams. Serena's vital signs, elevated but stable. The Predator family's biosignatures, non-aggressive patterns. And the drone's confused threat assessment. The drone's AI can't reconcile what it's seeing, Rio reported to his superiors. The Predator is behaving in a manner inconsistent with all previous encounters. It's protecting both its young and Dr. Valdez. The TSC advisors split into factions immediately. Some urged immediate termination of both the human xenobiologist and the Predator clan. She's compromised, possibly under some form of alien influence, while others recognized the potential diplomatic breakthrough. If these creatures are truly sentient, we're witnessing first contact, not just a biological survey. Back in the gorge, Serena made another fateful decision. She disabled her comlink, cutting off the TSC's ability to track her precise location or listen to her interactions with the Predator family. It was an act of defiance that could end her career, or worse, but she was determined to protect this newfound relationship at all costs. "I won't let them find you," she promised the Predator mother, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping her intent might somehow translate. "Not until I can convince them you're more than just specimens to be studied." As if in response, the Predator mother emerged from the shadows once more. She approached Serena with deliberate slowness, then gently brushed her muzzle against Serena's outstretched palm. When she pulled away, a tuft of silken fur remained, an emblem of trust that Serena carefully tucked into her jacket pocket. "We have an understanding," Serena whispered, half to herself. "We're equals now. Fair game if either side breaks the bond." Over the next few hours, the Predator family guided Serena through a network of tunnels that honeycombed the gorge. These passages, Serena realized, provided safe transit through Lycara's most dangerous territories, knowledge that only the apex predators possessed. They were sharing their survival strategies with her, an outsider, in a gesture that spoke volumes about their intelligence and adaptability. As they emerged from one such tunnel onto a ridge overlooking a verdant valley, Serena spotted movement in the distance. A line of TSC ground troops was converging on the area, their sleek transport vehicles slicing through the jungle undergrowth. A new confrontation loomed. Could Serena broker peace between the TSC and the Apex clan, or would violence erupt despite her efforts? The answer would determine not just her fate, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and Lycara Prime's most formidable inhabitants. Serena assessed the approaching TSC ground troops with a mixture of dread and determination. They moved with military precision through the jungle, their bioscanners sweeping for signs of the apex predator family. What they didn't expect to find was a human xenobiologist standing alongside those predators by choice. The predator mother, whom Serena had begun to think of as Arissa, after the ancient earth goddess of protection, sensed the approaching humans. She positioned herself slightly ahead of Serena, not in a threatening posture, but in a clearly protective one. The juveniles arranged themselves behind, watching with curious, glowing eyes. Serena had minutes at most before the troops would be within weapons range. She needed a plan, something that would make them pause long enough to see what she saw. Not monsters, but intelligent beings capable of empathy and cooperation. From her equipment pack, she extracted a flat panel emulator, a device typically used to record and analyze animal vocalizations. Working quickly, she programmed it to replicate the calming pulses she had recorded from Marissa during their interactions with the drone. These subsonic vibrations seemed to signal non-aggression among the apex predator clan. Then, taking a deep breath, Serena activated her emergency beacon, revealing her position to the approaching troops, but on her terms. "This is Dr. Serena Valdez," she broadcast on the TSC emergency frequency. "I am unharmed and standing with the X-17 specimens by choice. They are sentient. I repeat, they are sentient beings. Hold your fire and approach slowly." Through her visor, she could see the troop formation halt at the edge of the valley. A voice crackled over her comm. "Dr. Valdez, this is Commander Ellis. You are in violation of multiple TSC protocols. Step away from the specimens and proceed to the extraction point immediately." Instead of complying, Serena activated the emulator. The calming pulses rippled through the air, invisible but powerful. Arissa and her juveniles responded immediately, their postures relaxing, their bioluminescent eyes dimming to a gentle glow. "Commander," Serena replied, "I am transmitting visual feed from my visor. Please observe." She switched on her visor's outward-facing camera, streaming live footage of the scene. The massive predator mother standing calmly at her side. Juveniles peering curiously, but without aggression. The organized arrangement of the group suggesting social structure far beyond mere animal instinct. The commander's voice, when he responded, held a note of uncertainty. "Dr. Valdez, what are we seeing here?" "You're seeing first contact, Commander," Serena answered, emotion making her voice tremble slightly. "These creatures are not just apex predators. They have social structures, communication methods, possibly even rudimentary culture, and they've chosen to accept me rather than harm me." There was a long silence. Then, "Hold position. We're conferring with Orbital Command." Minutes ticked by. Serena maintained the calming pulse emission, speaking softly to Arissa and the juveniles. One of the smaller predators had taken a particular interest in her scanner, watching the lights blink with a tilted head that reminded Serena eerily of a curious child. Finally, the commander's voice returned. "Dr. Valdez, Orbital Command has, reluctantly, ordered a ceasefire. A xenobiologist team is being dispatched to your location under diplomatic protocols, rather than extraction protocols. Please maintain your position and continue, whatever it is you're doing that's keeping those things calm." "They're not things, Commander," Serena corrected gently. "But I understand. We'll be here." As the sun began to set over Lycara Prime, casting long shadows across the valley, Serena sat on a rock outcropping with Arissa and her juveniles arranged around her in a loose semicircle. The TSC troops maintained a respectful distance, their weapons lowered but not holstered, a tenuous peace built on mutual caution. In the weeks that followed, the Terran Science Consortium underwent a radical reassessment of the Lycara Prime mission. What had begun as classified xenobiological kill order was officially reclassified as First Contact Cultural Exchange. Serena found herself appointed as humanity's first Lycaran diplomat, a title she accepted with a mixture of pride and humility. Arissa and her juveniles, now collectively referred to as the Redwood Clan by TSC documentation, became living ambassadors for their species. A preliminary outpost was established at the edge of the Crimson Gorge, staffed by xenobiologists and diplomatic personnel trained specifically for non-humanoid first contact scenarios. Serena's transformation was perhaps the most profound. Once a lone researcher focused primarily on data collection, She had become a bridge builder, whose empathy transcended species boundaries. She learned to interpret the subtle variations in Arissa's subsonic communications, documenting an increasingly complex lexicon of predator vocalizations. In turn, she taught Arissa to recognize human diplomatic gestures and signals, creating a rudimentary but functional system of cross-species communication. The juveniles proved especially adaptable. Within months, they had learned to vocalize a close approximation of Serena in a series of harmonic pulses that never failed to bring tears to her eyes when she heard it. They watched human researchers with keen interest, occasionally mimicking their movements or manipulating simple tools that the humans provided. The implications of this unexpected alliance rippled outward, far beyond Lycara Prime. Back on Earth, and throughout allied star systems, Serena's success forced a paradigm shift in xenobiological approaches. Predators have culture. Kill orders need reevaluation became a mantra in training programs. Universities began incorporating interspecies empathy modules into their xenobiology curricula, using the Lycara Prime case study as a foundation. For Serena herself, the experience had transformed not just her career, but her fundamental understanding of life in the universe. The boundary between us and them, between sentient and animal, had been revealed as far more permeable than humanity had previously assumed. If a creature that evolution had shaped into the perfect predator could choose protection over predation, what other wonders might await discovery? 6 months after her first encounter with Arissa, Serena stood at the entrance to the Crimson Gorge, watching as a new group of human researchers was cautiously introduced to members of the Redwood clan. The process had become almost routine now, a careful dance of scents, sounds, and gestures that established mutual non-aggression. Her comm unit beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. It was a hollow invitation from the TSC, detailing a new mission to an uncharted planet on the far edge of explored space. This world, too, was rumored to host a potentially lethal apex species, one that previous survey teams had observed only fleetingly before retreating. Serena studied the message, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She glanced back at Arissa, who was demonstrating to a fascinated human researcher how the clan used certain fungi as natural antibiotics. Then, she opened her pack and carefully checked that her supply of Lycarin, calming gel, derived from Arissa's biochemistry, was fully stocked. If a mother lion could learn to love, she thought, imagine what else was out there. The universe had just become infinitely more complex and infinitely more wonderful than humanity had ever dreamed. That evening, as Lycara's 3 moons rose above the jungle canopy, Serena sat with Arissa at the highest point of the Crimson Gorge. The massive predator had guided her there through pathways unknown to the human researchers. Seeming to understand Serena's need for a moment of reflection away from the busy outpost, they sat in companionable silence, predator and human, watching the stars emerge in Lycara's violet sky. One of the juveniles, the smallest, whom Serena had nicknamed Echo for his habit of mimicking her gestures, nestled against her side, his 6 eyes half closed in contentment. "You know," Serena said softly, not expecting Arissa to understand her words, but taking comfort in speaking them nonetheless. "When I first landed on this planet, I thought my mission was simply to survive long enough to collect data. I never imagined." She trailed off as Arissa shifted position, extending one clawed limb to point at a particularly bright star. The predator made a series of low, harmonic pulses that Serena's translator rendered, with limited accuracy, as beyond place. Serena stared in astonishment. Was Arissa asking about other worlds? About the stars? The implications were staggering. If the apex predators of Lycara Prime had concepts of astronomy, of places beyond their world, How much more complex was their intelligence than even she had realized? Yes, she replied, pointing to the same star. Beyond. Other worlds. Like this one, but different. Arisa's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that Serena had come to associate with deep contemplation. Then the predator made another series of pulses. Serena from beyond. A lump formed in Serena's throat. Yes, I'm from beyond. But I'm here now, with you. Echo stirred against her side, his smaller limb reaching up to touch her face with surprising gentleness. His eyes, all 6, gazed at her with what she could only interpret as trust. In that moment, under alien stars with creatures that science had once classified only as lethal threats, Serena Valdez found herself at the center of a new kind of family, one forged not by blood or species, but by the universal language of empathy. The Lycaran Integration Initiative, as it came to be known, expanded rapidly over the following year. What had begun as a cautious outpost grew into a substantial research and diplomatic facility. Teams of xenobiologists, linguists, and cultural specialists worked alongside members of the Redwood clan to document and understand Lycaran society. The discoveries were revolutionary. The apex predators, now officially designated Lycaran sentients, rather than species X-17, displayed social structures far more complex than initially thought. They lived in clan groups of 20 to 30 individuals, with clear leadership hierarchies and specialized roles. They used tools, created semi-permanent shelters, and practiced what appeared to be rudimentary medicine using local flora. Most remarkably, they possessed a form of collective memory, stories, and knowledge passed down through generations via patterns of subsonic vibrations that the human researchers nicknamed song histories. These vibrations, when properly recorded and analyzed, revealed a rich oral tradition spanning what might have been centuries. Serena found herself at the center of this cultural exchange, her unique bond with Arissa providing insights that more formal research methods couldn't access. She spent days in the field with the Redwood clan, observing their hunting techniques, which proved to be far more selective and sustainable than the TSC had assumed. Their child-rearing practices, and their interactions with other species. The TSC, initially skeptical, became increasingly supportive as the commercial and scientific benefits of peaceful engagement became clear. Lycaran flora contained compounds with remarkable medicinal properties. The predator's knowledge of safe passages through the lethal jungle saved countless human lives and resources. And the precedent set by the Lycaran Integration Initiative opened doors for similar approaches on other frontier worlds. For Serena, personally, the greatest reward was witnessing the growth of understanding between species. Human researchers who had arrived, terrified of the monsters of Lycara Prime, now worked alongside them with comfortable familiarity. Arissa's juveniles, growing rapidly toward adulthood, displayed an insatiable curiosity about human technology and customs. Echo, in particular, had developed an uncanny ability to mimic human speech patterns, not in words, but in cadence and tone. He would follow Serena through the research facility, observing her interactions with human colleagues and occasionally interjecting with his own harmonically complex commentary. "He's trying to understand how we communicate," Serena explained to a visiting TSC official who had jumped at Echo's sudden vocalization during a meeting. "They process language differently than we do. It's more about pattern and resonance than specific sounds. But he's making connections." The official, a stern-faced administrator named Director Kwan, regarded Echo with a mixture of fascination and residual unease. "And you're certain these creatures don't pose a threat to our long-term presence here? They are apex predators, after all." Serena smiled, reaching out to touch Echo's shoulder in a gesture that had become their standard greeting. "With respect, Director, humans are apex predators on Earth, predation and sentience aren't mutually exclusive. The Lycarans hunt, yes, but they also protect, nurture, and now, cooperate. They're not so different from us in the ways that matter. Quan nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Your reports have been illuminating. Dr. Valdez, the consortium is considering implementing your protocols on 3 other frontier worlds with potentially sentient apex species. Your experience here has quite literally changed our approach to first contact scenarios. Later that day, as Serena recorded her daily observations in her private quarters, she reflected on how profoundly her own perspective had shifted. Once, she had viewed Lycara Prime as a hostile environment to be conquered through science and technology. Now, she saw it as a complex ecosystem where humans might find a place, not as conquerors, but as partners in a delicate balance. Her reflections were interrupted by an urgent message from the communications hub. A new TSC vessel had arrived in orbit, carrying specialized equipment for the next phase of the Lycaran initiative, and a personal communication for Serena. The message was from Lieutenant Rio Tao, who had been reassigned to TSC headquarters after the initial Lycaran contact. His holographic image flickered to life above Serena's desk, his expression serious but warm. Dr. Valdez, he began formally, then softened. Serena, I hope this finds you well. Your work on Lycara Prime has become something of a legend back at headquarters. But that's not why I'm contacting you. He paused, glancing down at something off-screen. The consortium has identified another world, Mira 9 in the SETI system. Initial scans show biological signatures consistent with highly evolved predator species, but also evidence of what might be structured settlements. After the success of your approach on Lycara, they want you to lead a first contact team. Serena leaned back in her chair, momentarily overwhelmed. Another world. Another opportunity to bridge the gap between species. Part of her wanted nothing more than to continue her work with the Redwood clan. She had built something precious here, something still fragile despite its growing strength. Yet, she also recognized the broader implications. If the lessons of Lycara Prime could be applied elsewhere, countless lives, human and non-human, might be saved. The galaxy might become a place of cooperation rather than conquest. The next morning, Serena sought out Arissa. The Predator matriarch had established a new den closer to the human facility, a sign of trust that still moved Serena deeply. She found Arissa supervising a group of juveniles, including Echo, as they practiced a hunting technique involving coordinated movements and precise timing. When Arissa noticed Serena's approach, she let out a welcoming pulse that vibrated pleasantly in Serena's chest. The juveniles paused their practice, Echo bounding over with characteristic enthusiasm. I need to talk to you, Serena said, knowing that while Arissa wouldn't understand the specific words, the Predator had become adept at reading human emotional cues. Something important. She activated her translator device, which converted her speech into the subsonic frequencies the Lycarans used for complex communication. It was an imperfect system, but it conveyed basic concepts effectively. Through a combination of technology, gesture, and the intuitive understanding they had developed, Serena explained the situation. Another world, another species that might be like the Lycarans, the possibility of new understanding. Arissa listened, her 6 eyes focused intently on Serena's face. When the explanation was complete, the Predator remained still for a long moment. Then, with deliberate movements, she reached toward Echo and another juvenile, drawing them forward. The translator struggled to interpret Arissa's response, but the meaning became clear when the 2 young predators positioned themselves at Serena's side. Arissa was offering them as companions, or perhaps ambassadors, for Serena's new mission. You want them to come with me? Serena asked, astonishment clear in her voice. To another world? Arissa's response was simple but profound. a series of pulses that the translator rendered as "teach others." Tears welled in Serena's eyes. Even after all this time, the depth of Lycaran intelligence and empathy could still surprise her. Arissa understood not just the concept of other worlds, but the importance of sharing the knowledge and trust they had built together. 2 months later, a specialized TSC vessel departed Lycara Prime, bound for the SETI system. On board were Dr. Serena Valdez, a team of xenobiologists trained in her methods, and, in a specially designed habitat area, Echo and his sibling, whom the humans had named Nova. The journey would take weeks, even at faster-than-light speeds. During that time, Serena continued her work with the young Lycarans, documenting their adaptability to new environments and their growing comprehension of human concepts. "They're not just coming along as specimens or even as ambassadors," she explained to her team during their first briefing in deep space. "They're coming as teachers. What we learned on Lycara Prime, about empathy across species boundaries, about recognizing intelligence in unfamiliar forms, they embody those lessons in ways we never could." As the ship hurtled through the void between stars, Serena often found herself in the observation lounge, gazing out at the streaking lights of FTL travel. Echo would join her sometimes, his growing form now reaching her shoulder in height. He would watch the stars with his 6 eyes, occasionally making soft harmonic pulses that needed no translation. In those quiet moments, Serena reflected on how far they had come, from predator and prey to colleagues, from strangers to family of a sort. And she wondered what new wonders awaited them in the SETI system, what new bridges might be built between species that evolution had shaped differently, but that shared the same fundamental capacity for connection. The universe, she had learned, was not just a place of danger and competition. It was also a place of possibility, of unexpected harmony, if only one had the courage to reach across the divide. If a mother lion could love, indeed, imagine what else was out there.